The Premier, Nathan Rees, was recently criticised for having his electorate office underneath an illegal brothel in Western Sydney. At least the TAB, which lies next door to Craig Bowman's new Raymond Terrace headquarters, is going.
Is that better than a brothel?
Well, look, at least a state member next to a TAB. No, I'll be careful here. That was a very good question.
More of them followed with a similar response, including a question on what the opposition's stance was on the future of the heavy rail line into Newcastle.
What the Hunter Liberals are currently doing is surveying people at both ends to see what their travel patterns are. We need to ensure that this is a win-win.
Craig Bowman is claiming just that in securing his new office, becoming the first Port Stephens MP in 2 decades to base himself in the electorate. Voters aren't so chuffed about this building though, as outdated structures still serve police at Raymond Terrace.
From what I understand and from what the member for Newcastle said the other day, the money is still there. It better be.
Ms McKay confirmed today that remains the case.
The police department were having discussions with council about taking over the council building. That seems to have fallen through. There is a site on the other side of the road.
Tenders are due to be called next April. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
Major renovations have already taken place at various businesses in the area, but Swansea MP Robert Coombs is hoping a new economic development strategy will identify new opportunities, particularly on Crown land. Building a marina at this site near Swansea Bridge could resurrect a lost industry.
Swansea was famous in actual fact for its boat repair and small boat building, and it's a wonderful opportunity, I think, to try and re-engage and bring that sort of enterprise back to the Swansea area.
Mr Coombs says there are plenty of boats travelling north which avoid Swansea because of problems with the bridge and channels at the mouth of Lake Macquarie.
If we can provide for some boating facilities on the eastern side of the Swansea Bridge, well, I think that will go a lot better in attracting some visits from that passing trade.
The development, which could include a tourist information centre, shops and cafes, can't go ahead until a consultant's report is released, possibly in early March. Meanwhile, Mawson's Lookout at Caves Beach is in line for a much-needed facelift.
It's one of the most scenic locations in Lake Macquarie, and the proposal is to upgrade the lookout area with pathways, walkways and landscaping.
Depending on developer contributions, the plan could also include toilets and telescopes, as well as a privately funded kiosk. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It's the old story of demand outstripping supply. According to the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales, there simply aren't enough family homes on the market to deal with the number of people looking for a rental in the Hunter. The situation is worst in Cessnock, where rents have jumped 13% in 12 months.
We've seen acute shortages in 3-bedroom properties, and that's mainly because of the employment growth up there with the resources boom, and the fact that we haven't seen investors up there.
But prices are up right across the region. According to the state government's latest housing, rent and sales report, they've risen by 12% in Newcastle and Maitland, 10% in Port Stephens and 7% in Lake Macquarie. The institute says rents will continue to climb unless the state and federal governments act.
I can't see this getting better until those incentives come back into the marketplace and attract investors back into the property market.
While rental prices for houses skyrocket, the reverse is true for small units in Newcastle's CBD due to an oversupply. But despite their downward trend, a yet-to-be-built penthouse at the Royal Development on Newcastle Beach has sold for a record $4.5 million. Developer Mirvac says the sale shows long-term confidence in the Hunters housing market.
There is real sentiment underlying the doom and gloom of economic times about the region and the region's ability to recover quickly.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Matt Hall has been with the Air Force for 17 years, most of them spent around fighter jets. And if there's one parallel to be drawn between his old career and new, it's that there's no room for error.
I've been very fortunate in my training in the Air Force and once again flying these types of planes behind me that I have a very deep understanding of risk versus reward and what the ramifications are of stepping over a line that you're not quite ready to accept.
Hall has been pursuing a spot in the Red Bull Air Race series since watching around in Perth 2 years ago. It's taken that long to work his way on the tour, the first Australian to do so.
Ever since I was probably 10 years old, I was doing aerobatics with my dad in an aircraft just down here at Aero Pelican. And it's something I've become used to that for me it's not stunts, it's just a way of life to go upside down and everything.
Hall has spent about 1,000 hours in the style of plane he'll fly at locations around the globe, in a sport which demands the very most from the world's very best. His young family and the RAF have given their blessing. The challenge now is to find a plane and sponsors to help fund every bit the flight of fancy.
An obvious opportunity for me that if I am going to try something outside of the Air Force, this is a pretty good job to do.
A job which starts next April. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
Head coach Gary Phillips returns this week to a team starting to hit its straps. A 1-1 draw against the ladder leaders is testament to that, with a full complement of players now also available. But it'll mean little if they don't win against cellar dwellers Perth on Sunday, and players don't even want to contemplate that.
Oh, that'd be terrible. I think we'd get ren pretty bad at training.
The 17-year-old Belmont talent knows all about hard work. Dropped from the initial squad, Talia has worked her way back into the starting team, a spot she doesn't want to lose again.
Well, actually, I'd just like to see how far I can get. I'd like to push myself and see if I can make the top level.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Final details on the player placement arrangement are still to be reached, but the basic concept means Newcastle Rugby League teams will have a range of Knights players available to them this season.
From a footy purist point of view, it's sensational. It's very exciting.
Keith Onslow is meeting with local clubs tonight to explain the arrangement, which includes some key points. Those not required in either the Knights NRL team or national youth side each weekend will be named in a player placement pool. If they're a local junior, they head back to their club, while the rest will be allocated according via a pre-season ballot, with weaker clubs having first pick. Elite players such as Kurt Gidley and Steve Simpson will only be used in ambassador roles for local sides. It's a plan backed by local administrators, and their clubs must agree on the proposal tonight.
Well, I think it'll go straight through because it's a boost in Newcastle Rugby League, and I think it's something, a shot in the arm that we require.
Some better news too for Akila Uwate, who broke his ankle playing for Fiji on Sunday night. He doesn't require surgery and will instead remain in a cast, but recovery could still be around 10 weeks. And the door remains open on Adam McDougall's return to the club, with contract negotiations ongoing.
Never say never, but Adam McDougall is our priority to get done at this stage.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
And a young bloke like him too, that to get a chance to drive in a big race like that is something he can savour for the rest of his life, and I suppose you can't blame him not wanting to get the drive.
More than 300 Newcastle teachers walked off the job to attend a stop work meeting at Adamstown to express their outrage at the state government's pay rise offer. 30 more were held across the Hunter.
Teachers are disgusted at the trade-offs that are being demanded for what is in effect a pay cut, with inflation running at 5% or more.
To get the pay rise, the state wants to cut teachers' sick days from 22 full pay and 22 half pay days per year to 10 full pay days, change leave conditions and workers' compensation payments. Teachers' union members today voted in favour of more strike action.
We will have a 48-hour stoppage at the start of next year because we can't go back to work under these conditions.
Teachers say unless the state improves its offer, it won't end there.
There'll be mass rallies held at the beginning of the school year next year, and those will be voting on more extensive industrial action.
Which will mean more empty playgrounds and missed classes for students. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
If the trip to Canberra was a junket, then this is one of the best gift bags Hunter councils could receive. With between $100,000 and $2.1 million each to spend, the region's 10 councils are scrabbling to come up with a list of projects to cash in on the promise.
A very pleasant surprise, yes. We do need this, all councils need this, and we would look for more if we can too.
Lake Macquarie got the biggest cut, and like many other councils, they'll be weighing up the government's eligibility guidelines before settling on their splurge. However, the General Manager is promising to have every cent allocated before Christmas.
This will help bring some projects forward, we hope. And yes, the answer is yes. We'll make sure that we do that correctly, properly, appropriately, and have it done with it by September of next year.
In Newcastle, it will go some way to addressing the $134 million infrastructure backlog.
Children's playgrounds, footpaths, opportunities for streetscapes, foreshore work and park redevelopment.
While some councils are worried about the challenge of completing the projects before the deadline, some of the smaller shires are already assembling specific wish lists to get a jump start. Many also want a slice of the $50 million Major Projects Fund, with Muswellbrook Council seeking support for its library redevelopment and Dungog wanting money for new sports grounds in Clarencetown and Dungog and a community cycleway. Penny Evans, NBN News.
After 8 years of agitating, the Link or Sink group has welcomed the pledge from developers. They believe the F3 link to Branxton is crucial to the Hunter's economic growth and employment.
If there's good road transport networks, then industry likes to establish where the good roads are.
The revised plan means scrapping the proposed section from Buchanan to Seahampton and replacing it with a shorter stretch at a cost of $50 million. The new link would turn off at an upgraded John Renshaw Drive at the entrance to the Donaldson Mine and cross east to the F3 about 2.5 kilometres south of the Beresfield intersection. The developers aim to avoid the gridlock at the Beresfield roundabout.
It's critical that we resolve the issue of getting traffic around the outside of Maitland. The second problem, of course, is that the congestion at the end of the F3 freeway is just about anybody's worst nightmare, particularly on a holiday weekend.
Hunterland and the Catholic Church are among 6 interested parties eager to see the F3 to Branxton link become a reality, helping with cash contributions and land around Black Hill. But it's not just being done out of the kindness of their heart. They're also keen to develop their land.
Our proposal is to bring those people together and harvest from the land or from the upvaluing of the land through a rezoning process some cash to facilitate the extension of the F3 through to Branxton.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
That's going to be spent on improving the environment in the emergency department, which is co-located with John Hunter Children's Hospital, and in the Royal Newcastle Centre, where children also receive specialist services.
By the end of this week, rescue duties are expected to be returned to ambulance officers across New South Wales. It was only in September then State Health Minister Reba Ma made the controversial decision to strip the service of 14 rescue units and hand them to the New South Wales Fire Brigades, claiming the move would free up the equivalent of 88 paramedic positions to focus on patient care. But NBN News has learned that decision was reversed on Friday during a meeting between the Health Services Union, the new Health Minister John Della Bosca and Emergency Services Minister Tony Kelly. The news circulated to union members via a confidential email. During the meeting, it was also decided to conduct a review of all rescue services over the next 12 months with input from all parties, as well as a review of the State Rescue Board. All that needs to happen now is for the State Rescue Board to recredit ambulance rescue vehicles so they can be put back into service. However, when contacted by us, spokesmen for both ministers involved denied the decision had been made and claimed it was still being worked through. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It was flight JQ474 from Melbourne, and one lucky youngster was plucked from the crowd arriving at the terminal. 6-year-old Anna Burke became the 1 millionth passenger to pass through the Newcastle airport in 2008. Travelling with her family from Melbourne, Anna was greeted with a $200 Jetstar travel voucher, plus plenty of media attention.
Walked in through the doors and all the poppers went off, and our daughter Anna was the millionth person through, so Newcastle airport. So
Bit of a shock?
Very exciting, yeah, big shock.
Despite the economic downturn, Newcastle Airport is taking off, with passenger figures up 13% on the same period last year. $20 million is being spent on a terminal expansion, including a new check-in area, while plans have been approved for an 880-space car park.
The expansion we're doing at the moment is for two reasons. One, to meet our current demand, because we are finding that the airport is currently stretched at peak times. Secondly, we are needing to provide some facilities for the future.
In the long term, the airport will be even larger, with a new multi-level car park, and Paul Hughes predicts up to 3 million passengers per year, including more international visitors.
We're first of all looking to move to maybe direct flights to New Zealand, and hopefully we'll eventually be able to see a direct link from Newcastle maybe into an Asian airport.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
He's learned from the game's best, but so far Jared Mullen hasn't cemented his place in the spotlight. Brian Smith believes all that is about to change.
He's led the way in even in the camp. He was great at the physical activities there, and he's just got a smile on his face the whole time, and he can make one hell of a difference to our footy club.
As for the rest of the squad, the coach says their attitude at boot camp and at training has been mind-blowing. But will it translate into a finals berth?
As my dad would say, mate, we're not here to pluck chickens. You know, we're determined that playoff berth is something for us all that's achievable after last season.
Steve Simpson is definitely focused on returning to the semis, happy and healthy after passing up the chance to play at the World Cup.
Of course it would be nice to play, but family comes first, and to be honest I probably needed a little bit of a break and a good off-season again. I haven't had one for a while.
Simpson will make a decision about his representative career early next season. Meanwhile, Simpson and his Knights teammates will soon face more competition for their spots, thanks to the club's new arrangement with the local Newcastle League.
Every player who's playing first grade in the local competition is available for selection. So if you're out there and you're doing well, you never know, Coach Smith might come and tap you on the shoulder and say, you better come in and start training with us.
Brian Smith will clarify the arrangement at a meeting with club officials on December 1. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. Back at the driving range this afternoon, James Nitties isn't dwelling on his performance at the New South Wales Open, where he finished 13th.
I didn't play great, but I could have missed a cut or played worse.
The 26-year-old will spend the rest of the week fine-tuning his game before heading to the US for qualifying school, one of the most pressure-filled events in the golfing world. 170 hopefuls playing 6 rounds in the California sun, competing for 25 places on the lucrative US PGA Tour and a further 80 spots on the lower-ranked Nationwide Tour. Before this year, Nitties had never made it to the final stage of qualifying.
I've dreamed of being there my whole life, and I know I'm playing good enough to get on it, but worst case scenario, if I'm on the Nationwide Tour, I've never had status on either Nationwide or PGA, so either tour is great.
He'll fly to Los Angeles on Tuesday to try and avoid jet lag before the all-important tournament.
Have about 3 or 4 practice rounds. Try not to burn myself out because it is 6 rounds. Hit the gym, keep fit, and just try to get into a good mental state before pretty much the biggest event of my life.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
The storm's been brewing between neighbours and council for months over the multi-purpose centre, but it's the Fort Scratchley Historical Society which is caught in the centre of the stoush. Along with the fort restoration, the new facility was a crucial addition to help pay the heritage site's ongoing maintenance of more than $100,000 a year.
It is a disappointment that it's not actually functioning now, but I don't think it'll be too much longer into the future before it is operating. It is a major source of income for the site.
The vision was to use it as a community and private function centre, including weddings, but many potential customers are now being turned away.
We're having a lot of requests from people for weddings, other functions, engagement parties. I'd love to see it open now. And as I said, there are a lot of disappointed people who had planned on using the site.
Newcastle City Council today said it was premature to predict an opening date. The council has approved the application for a change of use, but they're yet to receive tenders for the catering operations. They've also got to work through 20 conditions, including road changes, a request for stairs and a viewing platform, a ban on 18th through to 25th birthday parties, and strict operating hours. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
At 45, mother of three, Julie Frith had everything to live for, but depression had a strong hold.
And ultimately she succumbed to that and took her own life. As a family we looked at this and said, right, what can we do to honour her memory?
Rockin' the Black Dog was born of the tragedy, a concert in Julie's honour using the power of music to reach out to the community.
We really need to start breaking down some of that stigma, trying to get people to talk about their mental health as much as they talk about their physical health.
To be held at Camp Shortland opposite Nobby's Beach on Saturday, December 6, the festival will feature 9 music acts. Local stars Amy V and Mark Wells among those to donate their time and talent.
People can come along on the day and just listen to the bands if that's what they want to do, but there's also that information available for them as well.
I suppose the day is about two things. One is raising awareness and the next is having a really good time.
For Russell Frith, it's a chance to make a difference.
If I knew then what I know now, I think the outcome may have been different, but we can't change anything. And as I've said to a few people, if we can save just one life with this process, then it'll have all been worthwhile.
Whether it's at the scene of a car crash, fiery factory explosion, or simply delivering a patient to hospital, paramedics save lives every day. Ambulance officers say the job is both emotionally rewarding and challenging, likening it to a roller coaster ride.
You might go to an old couple and they've been married for 50 years and you've got to say, well, I'm sorry, your partner's just died, and it's like telling them your life's just died in front of your eyes, and then the next minute you're going to a childbirth and bringing life into the world, and it's a great feeling.
Today, people who have had either their own or a loved one's life saved by a paramedic had the chance to say thank you during the inaugural Thank a Paramedic Day.
A lot of people talk about AMBOs in a very high regard, but they haven't had the opportunity to actually talk to us directly and say thank you for what we do.
A small crowd turned up for the event at Hamilton Ambulance Station in Newcastle. Officers hope the day will grow in popularity over time. But you don't have to wait until next year to say thank you to an AMBO.
It's nice to get that feedback and meet people that we've helped and hear how they're going.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
News of the Adam Griffiths deal with new A-League franchise Gold Coast United was so exclusive not even club bosses knew he had signed until this morning.
Unfortunately, Adam hasn't conveyed that to me, but I'm sure he'll do that.
His twin brother Joel recently signed a lucrative long-term deal to stay in Newcastle, and both now face the prospect of one day playing against each other.
He was pretty disappointed initially, but I'm sure that he's starting to calm down now.
The tough defender, who's accepted a 3-year offer, denied the move was purely to help his fiancée find work, but part of a bigger picture.
There's certain things in the contract that allows me to go overseas if something was to come up, so that was one of the major factors.
He says the seed was planted weeks ago when contract talks with Newcastle stalled, rejecting a 4-year term and money the Jets say was comparable.
If I put to you what we put to Adam, it's the highest offer we put to a player outside the marquee salary cap.
And it didn't seem to be going anywhere, so I decided I better off make a decision now before the rest of the season goes to waste.
With a clear head, Griffiths and the Jets play Wellington across the Tasman this week, and their young Socceroos have returned, bringing with them much-needed options and depth.
Training's been fantastic this week. It's been sharp and all the boys are fighting for positions.
A view welcomed by the coach, who today took time to watch things from the stand, leading into a 2-game sideline ban.
I'll sit in a nice little area where the camera won't be on me, and it'll be good.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
It's time, to take the blinkers off, and just have a top-tier competition. Obviously, probably from Newcastle. Have a second-tier competition on the Central Coast.
Mainly, headgears and skipping ropes and some better bags would be good.
Whatever we can do to make it a little bit more worthwhile for the boys to come in and train and work hard to make those fights.
On the banks of the river and with placards in hand, Stroud residents are ready to wage war. They're trying to protect the health of Mammy Johnson's River and its precious ecosystem, home to platypuses.
We've got a very clean, pure river here, and anything you add to it is going to degrade it.
Durrally Mine, owned by Gloucester Coal, wants to trial a release of so-called good quality operational water into the river, claiming it won't harm the environment. But residents are sceptical, including a retired water resources engineer.
My experience is that any form of discharge into any river is detrimental to the health of that river.
We've seen enough proof around New South Wales and Australia of rivers and creeks that have already been damaged or killed off completely by coal mining poisoning.
They're also concerned about the water quality as the river water is pumped into a treatment facility for the town's drinking water. The matter will be decided by the state government.
This can be prevented. Mining companies can spend money on prevention. They can treat the water, they can store the water, they can have many different ways of dealing with it, but it's a question of cost.
Along with the proposed river discharge, the Durrally Mine is seeking to extend the existing pit. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Wood Street was closed as teams of workers and huge cranes lifted and pulled old mining equipment out of the former Newcastle Regional Museum's basement.
It's been here 20 years and we're pulling out 100 tonnes of equipment that's been quietly resting there, and I'd have to say a lot of it doesn't want to come out.
The heavy pieces made up the museum's underground mining exhibit, but now these once treasured items are bound for the scrap heap. The price of keeping them in storage apparently more than they're worth.
1.5 million people came through this museum and most of them saw that exhibition, so for that reason it's probably a sad thing.
And while the heavy machinery will vacate the area over the weekend, it'll be back on Monday to take down the poppet head.
I know it's a landmark for a lot of people, but it really has to come down. It's not in good condition and it's a danger these days.
But unlike the museum's mining relics, it will go into storage. With the underground mining exhibition now gone, all 4 levels of the museum are completely empty, meaning that the building is finally ready to be handed over to its new owner. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
They're not usually reserved for men of the cloth, but a standing ovation seemed appropriate for the Very Reverend Graham Lawrence. The Dean of Christchurch Cathedral clearly humbled by the occasion.
I keep saying all I've done is to do my job, and that's really what I've done, I think. And I'm a bit overwhelmed at that kind of response.
Since the early 80s, Reverend Lawrence has worked tirelessly to lift spirits across the community, at times putting himself in harm's way. He's also gone above and beyond to raise much-needed funds, as well as driving the restoration of the iconic cathedral following the '89 earthquake.
He's done that totally on his own initiative, and you cannot assess the value of that to the city. It's been marvellous.
This is a man who's given his full attention, full devotion to the job, and he's achieved a great deal.
Dean Graham will see out the rest of the year at his spiritual home before he has time to enjoy the finer things in life.
After that, I'm looking forward to having a little bit more time for me, but we'll see.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
The students at Mayfield East are as green as you get. They've joined the Climate Camp program and undertaken a host of energy and water-saving initiatives in the school.
The toilets are dual flush, so you always just press the half flush instead of the full flush to save water, and the rainwater tank is connected to the toilet.
We have like the worm farm, and we've done the bins, painted them so children know which one to put the right stuff in, like papers and stuff like that.
They've even carried their environmentally friendly attitudes from the playground into their homes.
If my brother's lights are turned on, I turn them off, and I only use the fans when we need them.
Today they unveiled their own special environment wall. Embracing green initiatives is something the youngsters say we should all do.
It's important to save water and energy because we are the country that's getting hit the worst by global warming.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
One in and two out. That was the equation today for the Jets before departing for Wellington. Defender Joe Wheelhouse has been ruled out with a hip problem, while Sean Ontong was also left at home after making his debut earlier this month. It means Danish import Jasper Hawkinson gets his chance to win back a top-grade spot full-time after falling out of favour with coach Gary Van Egmond. He joins the likes of Matt Thompson and Adam Griffiths, who also in the Youth League, as the coach presses his players for the right type of performance.
Definitely I feel that they can play better, and that probably is the case that they need to show more in the game.
Meanwhile, the Jets W League side will have the services of their two Swedish League imports for their clash on Sunday at Broadmeadow against Perth. Rebecca Smith and Sana Frosterval were both given the green light to play, but with coach Gary Phillips boasting his strongest squad to date, it's unclear just how he'll use them on Sunday. Jim Callanan, NBN News. He was the hot tip to make it 3 straight wins on Sunday in a race he's made his own, but Nathan Stewart is instead in hospital, recovering from surgery this morning to repair a damaged elbow suffered in a bike fall yesterday. Sunday's Olympic distance race was to be his last hit out before the Busselton Half Ironman in 2 weeks, but that's now ruled out as well. Winner at Maitland last month, Brian Keane will be hard to beat on Sunday, but local Boyd Conrick is now a confirmed starter and will be the best local chance. Saturday night is Speedway night at the Newcastle Showground. It's the only meeting in the lead up to the Australian titles here in January, but transport issues are having an impact, with some European-based riders still waiting for their bikes to arrive, including Cessnock's Cozza Smith. He's been forced to borrow a bike for the event, while Alex Davies headlines a group of talented teenagers who are now cutting their teeth in the senior ranks. Tomorrow night's racing will mark the Australian junior representatives' first ride at senior level.
It's time, to take the blinkers off, and just have a top-tier competition. Obviously, probably from Newcastle. Have a second-tier competition on the Central Coast.
It was a publicity stunt with a very colourful difference, letting a drag queen loose on unsuspecting picnickers. It was all in a bid to get people from regional cities to attend one of the final Sydney shows of Priscilla Queen of the Desert, the musical. Apart from being stalked and harassed by cast and crew, park goers were treated to some impromptu numbers.
Oh, I love the nightlife. I got to boogie on the disco ride, yeah.
The talented vocal stylings coming from Newcastle lass Miss Min.
I'm one of the divas in the show. There's 3 divas, and we sing all the songs most of the songs that you hear in the show, and the guys, the 3 main characters, mime to us.
And boy did she show she could sing.
When the working day is done, oh girls, they wanna have fun. Oh girls just wanna have fun.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. It couldn't have been a more peaceful protest. Around 100 environmental activists from Sydney and Newcastle marched on Eraring Power Station this morning with this message for the federal government.
If they're serious about climate change, to commit that our greenhouse pollution from Australia will start falling from the year 2010 onwards.
Protesters were almost outnumbered by police, with several specialist units, including the Mounted Police Commuter Crime Unit and Dog Squad, brought in to escort them through the station's grounds. Eraring Energy also erected hundreds of metres of temporary fencing to ensure activists stayed out of no-go zones. Police were pleased with their behaviour.
By and large, it's been a very peaceful and well-facilitated protest.
Protesters so relaxed they finished the day with an organic vegetarian barbecue. Madeline Bond, NBN News. Grace, Corey and Danny look like average, happy, healthy children, but they all suffer from type 1 diabetes. The debilitating condition means after every play session they have to check their blood glucose levels, which can drop without warning and, if left untreated, leave them comatose.
I was at my friend's house and one minute I was running around playing football and stuff, and then the next I knew I was on the ground.
The life-threatening disease means the kids have to test their blood 6 times and inject insulin 4 times every day.
It hurts when you put the needle in.
Eventually, it can lead to blindness, heart and kidney disease. The brave youngsters are headed to Sydney tomorrow to meet with members of the state parliament.
I'm going to ask for their help and support to find a cure for diabetes.
They also want more public awareness of the disease.
I'd rather a cure for diabetes than $1 million.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Belmont has long held legitimate claims as a leading golf nursery in Australia, and Brendan Smith is another of its promising products. After a junior career which saw him represent at the World Championships, the now senior Australian representative heads to South America this week for 2 events, including the Argentine Amateur.
The course we're playing at Eisenhower trophies there in 2 years' time, which if I get picked for it would be nice. So just get a bit of experience over there.
After winning the recent W.E. Alexander with a record score and finishing the highest ranked amateur at the recent New South Wales Open against the professionals, there's a chance he could join them full-time before long.
Yeah, a little bit, but there's plenty of stuff to work on yet, but yeah, we'll just see how it goes.
One of the more famous Belmont alumni, Nick Flanagan, will arrive home soon and seek immediate treatment for ongoing back spasms. Forced to pull out of the US PGA Tour qualifying event in California after just one round, it's unclear if Flanagan will play at all in the big Australian tournaments this summer.
I like to see them try to win it. I like to see their eyes light up when they win it. It gives me a kick.
Mother of four, Emma Murphy got more than she bargained for when she went through the Hunter IVF program 2 years ago.
We went back for a baby number 2 and we got 2, 3 and 4.
And she wouldn't have it any other way. Emma still maintains close contact with the medical staff who helped her conceive her beautiful triplets.
We still have that relationship with them now where I sometimes ring and catch up and let them know how we're getting on. It's great. I'd recommend anyone to use Hunter IVF.
And dozens of parents who have used the service feel the same way. Today, they and their precious babies braved blustery conditions to attend the IVF Centre's annual Family Day.
How could you not? We're only a family because of these people. It doesn't matter what the weather's like, and it's so good to catch up with them.
Staff just as pleased to see some of the 470 little lives they've helped to create over the past 6 years.
It's a fantastic experience for us. It's probably one of our happiest days of the year.
Doctors say IVF technology is constantly changing and improving to help older mothers conceive.
Whereas we'd consider our best group, the most successful group would have been under 35. We're now seeing under 40 as being a group which realistically has a very good chance with IVF.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
You really had to wonder what the attraction was to get in the water on a day like today, but it was almost as warm in as it was out. With Newcastle Harbour whipped up by those strong westerly winds, the opening swim leg wasn't a fun place to be.
That much chop out there, you're getting breaths of water instead of air.
Czech Republic's Jan Vanka Fronka led a 5-man pack out of there first, but this race quickly became about 2. As conditions and the course claimed many, Gavin Scott remained on track as he went about breaking up the field. But Redhead's Boyd Conrick never let him out of sight. The 40k cycle may have been hard, but the 10-kilometre run for home was the real tester.
Coming back, I was just thinking, man, this last 3k, it's worse than the first 7.
Scott finishing first and more than happy to be there, ahead of Conrick in second.
I was just happy to get to the finish line. I've raced all around the world and I think that was by far the strongest wind I've ever experienced.
Sydney's Melissa Vanderwater, the first female home and also the new state champion for the Olympic distance.